talk about political correctness. What is it? And is it slashing away at our freedom of speech like a top-billed star in a terrible Friday the 13th knockoff? We'd call it Saturday the 30th, and it would take place in a European discotheque.
Hey folks, welcome to my show, Low Hanging Fruit. This is a series where I find some people who say some stupid things, and then with the help of my trusty stick, we pick them off, one by one. Low Hanging Fruit. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about something that I'm pretty passionate about. Is political correctness ruining comedy? The answer is no, but they sure are trying. Meet MacKay and Laci Green. Together they want to create an infantilized world where people let humor affect them in the worst possible way. We all know where they're going with this, so let's check out their points anyways.
Political correctness is the act of choosing your words to avoid offending people.
That sounds very noble and all, but what sounds better is encouraging people to not get offended by harmless jokes.
Political correctness became a derogatory term itself in the 1980s, when old school stand-up comedians could say whatever they want and were essentially treated like rock stars for it. It was very in vogue to say racist, misogynistic, and, because it's the 80s, AIDS-phobic stuff.
AIDS phobia makes me sick. Even sicker than AIDS. You've got to learn to embrace the AIDS.
And you'd get the laugh because you were, ooh, being naughty.
Yikes.
My favorite example of this is Andrew Dice Clay, if only because I get to mention that he was the very first contestant fired on season 2 of Celebrity Apprentice.
Wait, are you talking shit about the Dice Man?
Celebrity Apprentice loser Andrew Dice Clay.
You don't fuck with the Dice Man.
Why you looking at me? Don't look at me, suck my dick, concentrate!
Good one, Dice. Also, this comedian here clearly doesn't understand the character that Dice is playing, just like every other perpetually offended SJW critic who chooses the worst possible interpretation for any off-color joke. To them, they're all just racist, misogynistic, and AIDS-phobic.
If you're walking around with shit on your dick every day, you're bound to pick something up, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, it's pretty obvious that some of Dice's material is dated and might not work today, but even comedy that intentionally offends can have a purpose. Dice has done some pretty good work where the point was to intentionally offend his audience, and sometimes that can make for some real innovative comedy. In this album, The Day the Laughter Died, he walks half the crowd, and even accuses a dad in the audience of wanting to fuck his young daughters that were with him. It's pretty fucking funny. I suggest checking it out. These PC comedy police claim that they just want to give their opinions about certain jokes or comics, but instead of just tooting them out or criticizing them, a lot of these PC comedy police want to go a step further and get people banned from venues and platforms, ruining the experience for anyone else who might have enjoyed it. And political correctness in comedy is getting much worse nowadays. There's not even any big comedians like Dice these days, and now comedians like Daniel Tosh, who we'll come back to later in this episode, are getting blasted for their jokes. And college campuses have gotten so bad that even the king of clean comedy himself, Jerry Seinfeld, is freaked out by it. What's the deal with that?
Leveraging political incorrectness for comedy is a lot like another popular 80s relic. Cocaine. Back then, everybody was doing it, but nowadays, whipping that shit out at a party just seems kind of pathetic.
Hey, you know what's pathetic? Getting offended by jokes. Here, you need to chill out and try some of this shit.
That reminds the people hearing it that, at the end of the day, their humanity can be boiled down to a single, horrible epithet.
If someone were to make a PC joke that explicitly calls out how bad racism or sexism is, they'd still be reminding people about that fact. Doing it from a standpoint that is less preachy doesn't make it any worse. It's actually less condescending to the audience when you grant that they have the intelligence to understand that it's just a joke. So once again, you're encouraging people to get offended. How is it beneficial for someone to let themselves get hurt by a joke, or assume that someone has bad intentions when telling a joke when that's not clear? Luckily, free speech allows me to criticize your criticism.
Let's say I'm doing a stand-up show and I'm doing a bit about pasta.
So during this part, she basically tries to be funny by making a ridiculous example of her point, using an offensive pasta joke. Ha.
Why you gotta add to the linguini?
Don't worry, I'll spare you the cringe. Cause I like you.
Instead of digesting criticism in the way that a comedian is supposed to, because remember, your job is to make the audience laugh, they're kicking up a tantrum like a toddler in the Disney store who just found out that that singing Elsa doll that they've been coveting for months is completely sold out. And they just can't let it go, 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 let it go. So no, political correctness is not ruining comedy. It's actually making it a hell of a lot smarter. Let it go, let it go. When you don't have exhausted old tropes and gimmicky, shocking punchlines to fall back on, you have to think of more creative ways to execute your primary directive as a comedian, which is to make the audience laugh. What do you guys think? Is political correctness ruining comedy? Let me know in the comments below.
Okay. Wait. Never mind, that was a shit argument. Let's check out the next fruit hanging from our tree. Laci Green has a video titled, "It's Just a Joke." I like to believe that the title accurately describes the video, but I fear the worst.
When comedians be like, they were so fat that they're...
She picks Nicole Arbor as an example of comedy. I guess I'm not the only one who's going after some low-hanging fruit.
My sister's off the charts. I replaced her pepper spray with silly string. Anyway, that night she got raped.
Nice. Way to edit the joke to give as little context as possible.
When I first started speaking up about rape jokes when I was in high school, a bunch of my friends were like, oh my god, Laci, it's just a joke.
Your friends sound pretty reasonable. Maybe you should have listened to them.
Being cruel and then calling it humor doesn't make it any less cruel. A pile of shit with a bow on it is still a pile of shit.
Yeah, that's about right.
The most basic tenet of comedy is that it's supposed to make us laugh.
Like this?
Let it go! Let it go!
A good joke can be clever, smart, uncomfortable, weird, biting, goofy, obnoxious, and yes, even offensive.
Okay then. So then why do you keep on speaking out against jokes that you're offended by?
Things like rape jokes, fat jokes, police brutality jokes that come at the victim's expense, that's a key, normalize inequalities that already exist in the world.
This is for the most part just not true. When people laugh at offensive jokes, the audience is laughing at the comic tragedy in the joke, or they're laughing at the ignorant attitude that the comedian purposely puts on, like in that Tosh joke. But the perpetually offended are often not perceptive enough to understand the context of the joke, and the vocal minority proceeds to make a big stink about it.
I am an American, and I have freedom of speech. I totally agree.
And what's your point?
See, I say all manner of offensive shit to the mainstream. I'm out here, y'all.
No, you don't. You have a sex advice show on MTV that's aimed at youth. That's like the epitome of mainstream. You play it safe by pandering to millennials and social justice warriors, and the only thing controversial about you is how controversially stupid your show is.
Just like any other form of entertainment, comedy does not have some special sacred immunity to criticism.
Once again, of course you have the freedom to criticize, but now I'm criticizing you and Megan for trying to convince impressionable youth to get offended by jokes. I also see here in the comments that you jokingly referred to Republicans as rape-publicans. So to you, a rape joke is only okay when it aligns with your political ideology? I bet far-left politics has a lot to do with the perpetually offended comedy police and all the professional victims of the world. I also think this whole topic is similar to Gamergate, in that there are people who aren't even involved in the field, storming in and enforcing their agenda for their own personal gain.
While Daniel Tosh might think that rape is absolutely hilarious.
Okay, that's it. I'm gonna play the full unedited joke. The humor clearly comes from the audience understanding that rape is terrible, but Tosh and his sister are so morbid with their sibling rivalry that they find it acceptable.
People have always told me I have a sick sense of humor. What do you say to that? I assume it's relative. Who are you comparing me to? Carrot Top? Then yeah, I'm a little blue. To my circle of friends, I'm tame. My sister's off the charts. I play practical jokes on her constantly, though. I got her so good a few weeks ago. I replaced her pepper spray with silly string. Anyway, that night, she got raped. And she called me the next day going, "You son of a bitch! You got me so good." No. As soon as I started spraying him in the face, I'm like, Daniel! This is gonna really hurt.
So no, Laci, Tosh doesn't think rape is hilarious, but the audience thought Tosh's joke is hilarious.
Many of us come to comedy to have a good time, not to be reminded that other people see us as less than human.
What I don't like about this argument is that it sounds well-intentioned, but this idea basically just calls for the censorship of controversial topics. Comedy is one of the few art forms that pretty much has a free pass to make people laugh while challenging ideas. So maybe you should just stay home if you feel you're in too much of an emotional state to enjoy jokes about topics that trigger you. Stay at home and figure your shit out, instead of going to a show where you might get offended and then trying to shame people who try to bring laughs to dark topics.
What we choose to say and do with our platforms, that speaks volumes about our character. We can punch up at abuses of power, or we can continue to punch at those who are already down.
Now, a lot of people say I should be punching up with my comedy. I should be punching up the big guys. They say I should never be punching down. But it's just so fun to beat the fucking shit out of midgets. It's like playing whack-a-mole. Knock out all 7 dwarfs and then fuck Snow White before she wakes up. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be here all week.
I want to end end by saying that it is okay to tell an off-color joke.
Okay, so then what's the point of this?
I think the key is to recognize and apologize.
Oh, I get it. So it's not okay. If you make an off-color joke and people get upset, you're supposed to get down on your knees and apologize. Never.
There are some amazing comedians in our YouTube community.
Well, most of these names that I recognize are almost as unfunny and obnoxious as you. The Fine Bros? Are you kidding me? Oh, and our good friend MacKay. Right. Now me personally, I've been doing stand-up comedy at open mics for a bit over a year now. My jokes can sometimes get a bit, edgy. But I found in my experience that the people who make a big deal out of it are either drunk rednecks who don't understand dark humor, or spoiled millennials who don't understand that their opinion isn't that important. My point is, don't be a dumbass who tries to convince impressionable youth on the internet to be pussies with thin skin and get offended by jokes. Dark and edgy comedy is one of the most fascinating forms of entertainment. It allows people to laugh at and bring light to the dark parts of humanity. I think dark humor helps me deal with things like depression, the eternal void of death, and the fact that no one will ever love me. Political correctness also takes words away from the comedic vocabulary and then replaces them with new words that are meant to shame people who say the old words. It's a slippery slope that could lead to justifying the violence that radical Muslims commit against people who satirize Muhammad. Now there are tons of newer forms of edgy comedy to embrace, like Filthy Frank, or $1 Million Extreme, or Anthony Jeselnik, and many more that push the boundaries of comedy. And I will use my free speech to criticize anyone who tries to minimize the proliferation of the evolution of the comedy genre. Make comedy edgy again. Anyways, that about wraps up this episode of Low Hanging Fruit. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for some more weekly videos. If this video gets 50 likes, I'll draw a picture of me fucking Muhammad and then go to my local mosque and give it to the imam. Check out some of my other videos. Peace out, faggots.
You
Any
don't
better.
have permission
Let's show them how it's done.
to
This
white
video is
person.
super. Okay, first of all, I'm not white. I'm a stick. Fuck you. I'm leaving anyways. Let's go back and check out that other. Well done.